Surely, Caleb, there's not another Georgia receiver or another Georgia football player arrested. That can't be the case. And surely it has nothing to do with a car, right?
It has something to do with the car.
Oh.
And it happened again. So
this is troublesome. How bad is the latest one?
Georgia freshman wide receiver Sacovie White, who was a 4-star early enrollee in the class this year. He's an in-state guy out of Cartersville, Georgia. He was arrested Saturday morning, it turned out, on a charge of reckless driving and driving down a one-way roadway. According to the Athens Clark County Police jail log, he was arrested at 3:04 a.m. and released an hour later on a $26 bond. Now, further details of White's arrest are not notable, but if it's reckless driving, if it's 3:04 in the morning and you're on a one-way road, I feel like you were doing something stupid, right?
Yeah, you're either drunk or you were doing something really, really stupid. And by the way, I don't know which report you're looking at, but I see this CBS report that also references Travis Etienne Jr., a highly billed transfer from Florida who you know about, arrested in March for driving under the influence, reckless driving, and 2 misdemeanor charges. I have to be honest with you. They've had so many, that one slipped under the radar. But that's troublesome that he would show up and already find the ire of the law. I mean, is this a real problem? Yes. We told you this a year ago. Georgia has a problem for a couple of different reasons. Number one, like every other school, their players, and I worry about this for Tennessee too, to be real honest with you, because I know their players are buying $250,000 cars. I know it. I know that it's all legal now, so you don't get busted for it. But I also know the dangers being an older man than a younger kid, practically, that there's some roads you shouldn't go too fast on. I worry about this as a whole. I think Georgia gets the most spotlight, but there's no denying that they've had more issues than anybody else, right? I mean, I guess the question is, did Georgia have a problem specific to Georgia? And I say absolutely yes. I think they do, even if Tennessee were to get a couple of tickets here in the next couple of days. I think Georgia's had this ongoing, the road between Athens and Atlanta, it's like it was made to be a drag racing road. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know, but Kirby Smart should not have played Travis Etienne in the spring game. That he got arrested before. That was absolutely ridiculous. How you would play him in that game sends the wrong message. For the first time, with all these incidents, I am of the mindset that Kirby Smart is going to lose this team. I don't know if it happens this year, next year, or 3 years. But when I've been around, when discipline starts to slide, it slides in many different areas, and it's nearly impossible to get back. So for the first time, I'm willing to say I think the Georgia thing with Kirby Smart ends poorly from a lack of discipline. Now, you've got to be pretty bad to get fired after 2 national championships. I realize that. But I think it ends in a not great way. A not great way could also be a very serious traffic accident, which I'm afraid might be right around the corner. Caleb?
Well, I mean, that's already happened, didn't it, with Jalen Carter?
Yeah, or another one. Maybe 2 surely would push him to do something. Yes. No, 1 has happened. You're right.
Yes, and so Kirby Smart in March came out and said, I can only speak for my university, but I think we do it better than anybody in the country when it comes to educating his team on the dangers of speeding. That's what he said. This is a level of brazenness that even Philip Fulmer didn't have in the 2000s. Fulmer would at least come out and be like, we got some immature players, they need to get their act together, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to tell you guys what has happened with Georgia. And by the way, I'm going to have a column coming up very soon about how, if you really look at their track records, Kirby Smart is not that much better than Mark Richt. Just things have played out for him a little bit better. One of the biggest differences between Georgia under Kirby and Georgia under Mark Richt, and if you wonder why they've taken that next step, Georgia, and this is a known thing, guys, they were a legit model of integrity under Mark Richt for 16 years. And not just Mark Richt, but for long before that, for decades. I can't say decades. I don't know about the Vince Dooley years in the 80s or 70s, but I can say, like, between Vince Dooley and Kirby Smart, they had really high standards beyond what other SEC programs had. And I do think with Mark Richt, that's what kept Mark Richt from getting over the hump at Georgia to try to win a title, was they were a lot stricter with their standards on whether or not players could play, if they were going to suspend players. I mean, they were about to suspend Todd Gurley for the year, remember, in 2014 over some random accusation about selling some memorabilia?
I do. I remember I think he was in passenger side of a car. And he autographed the memorabilia. Yeah, it was way different. The part with Kirby Smart, if I'm a Georgia fan, that frustrates me is some of his public comments. You are potentially endangering people in Athens, but his comments are more along the lines of, we do it better than anybody in college football when it comes to educating players about speeding. Well, that's not getting it done. It's got to be a little bit more. And don't think for a second that something fiery and crazy can't happen. Okay, because things happen all the time. We didn't know about how much trouble, you want to say, Lane Kiffin was in. Give me some other examples of guys that were fired kind of surprisingly. It would take something big. It would take something.
Well, he wouldn't get fired. I'll tell you what he would do. He would bolt and try his hand at the NFL. He'd decide he wants to try the NFL right before things collapse. He would pull an Urban Meyer and run before it came back on him. And that's what Kirby Smart would do. Look, this is why I was getting to Kirby Smart with Georgia with Mark Richt. I think Georgia really did get sick of being the only program in the SEC outside of Vanderbilt to hold some sort of integrity standards. And when they hired Kirby Smart at the same time, they said, you know what? Forget it. We're going to do a 180 and not care at all. And the way Kirby Smart defends them publicly like that, I don't care what he says to them privately. I'm about to be a parent. Dave, I know you're a parent. I was a kid growing up. I got to be honest. Even if my parents told me something privately, like you shouldn't do this, if I saw them publicly defend me to a bunch of other people, I would think it's okay for me to do it then. Yeah. Honestly. Yeah. You know what I mean? So.
Well, and take it a step further. With Kirby Smart not having the university call him out, is he like, well, I guess this is okay. I can just say we do everything we can. We're doing everything possible. It just happens. I mean, does he think the same thing on a higher level?
It's possible. And then there's going to come a moment where, and by the way, this stuff, we're starting with reckless driving and putting people in danger. Like with Fulmer, it started with little things. It started with, I'm just going to say it, lack of discipline. And I love these two guys. Letting John Henderson and Travis Stevens fly to the award ceremony 2 days before the SEC championship game. And saying, no, not saying you guys have a job to do in this SEC title game. You can't go to the award shows in New York. Sorry, we got to beat LSU. And guess what? Travis Stevens fumbled against LSU in that game. Maybe because Fulmer let him fly to New York to try to accept an award that he didn't even get, the Doak Walker Award. Okay, that happens. Then it goes to not making James Banks practice. Then it goes to and then it spirals into 17 people getting arrested in one offseason. At which point Fulmer loses his temper, and I know this story, is throwing water bottles and water coolers in a team meeting because he's so angry about one more arrest. And everybody at that point, from my understanding, and I remember talking to players, Dave, no one took him seriously when he lost his temper at that point because he had let so much happen before then that people kind of found it funny.
Well, you can't get it back. You can't get discipline back. And you'll know that as a parent. I mean, you can as a parent because you're around them 24/7. But if you let discipline go for a little while, it's going to take a few months to get it back with your kid, and your kid's with you 24/7. With another grown man, if you let him leave early from work, if you let him take extra long breaks and do all those things and say you shouldn't do that, and then you go tell somebody else in front of everybody what a great job you're doing, would you even think about changing your ways, I'd go ahead and live it up. I mean, that's what these guys are doing now. They're able to drive as fast as they want to, get the cars they want to. And, you know, I think if I'm Kirby Smart, I'm concerned about this whole situation because you had David Green, quarterback. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't David Green. Quarterback there now. Name. Carson Beck. Carson Beck text out his Lambo. Wouldn't you like the quarterback to be a little bit more of a leader and just get, I don't know, a Ford Bronco or something? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because, you know, no, there's never been a football athlete involved in criminal stuff that involves a Ford Bronco. That's never happened before.
The new Broncos, though, are really nice. And you can pick one up at our good friend Ray Varner Ford.